There you go.
Take the next one. Put one in your right hand. One in your left hand. So that the left hand over the right
If
hand.
somebody put that people, they go investigate.
No, well, in this case, you want everybody know.
You want to know when that comes.
Yeah.
There's always.
Much for coming, Mr. Dalai. I'm very happy to see you here. Don't forget the blessings of the Tulsi leaf. It's very important, especially at our age. And Ms. Santu, likewise, Mr. Tulsi. And Mr. Shea, how are you? What station are you working for? Oh, and our good friend. And thank you very much, Hollis. And I forgot your name. Leona. Thank you so much. All right, so that we know that recently devastating floods have occurred throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, especially in the low-lying areas. And there's been a lot of discussion as to the causes of these floodings. And we have a report based on our own research on the causes of this flood nationally and the remedies for this flooding. So we hope that you would have a look at this report and give this message to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because we think it's a very important report. Today is also the 5th anniversary of the beginning of the first hunger strike when I went up to Port of Spain in front of the Prime Minister's office. It's exactly 5 years ago. And that hunger strike was very much informed, the science behind it, by the work and the ideas of Mr. Baliram Siu. And the reason why we have his photograph up today, you'll see more photographs and a video of him, is because I want to let the nation know that he was right all along the time. For 12 years, he informed the president. He went to visit the president. He went to visit the prime minister. He visited the opposition leader on a couple of occasions. He visited all the relevant MPs and ministers. For 12 years, he lobbied and told them exactly what would be the case. And he died last year. He's one of 4 persons on Gopi Trace who died last year, people in the HRM. So I want to celebrate the life of Mr. Baliram Sui. He lived for 30 years working in the Ministry of Works, and he understood the hydrology of the Remoute Lagoon. And that is a man who was one of the ministers of Works actually tried to bribe him. When he came out of a meeting, he said, well, I will fix you up. But he never, ever relented on his scientific position. NITCO, the Ministry of Works, they tried to win him over, but he never, because he was always concerned with the welfare of other people. So he's a man of great character. He's a man of great science and a man of great steadiness. I think you knew him. And I want to tell the nation how important he was, because his analysis also was spot on. So I will just read certain parts of the report, and you will take away the rest of it, and then we'll have Ms. Tara Sharma say a few words. The highway route movement continues to assert that the David to Mondesir Highway constitutes an economic, social, and financial and ecological crime against the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Any attempt to load the Oropouche Basin with 5 large interchanges, a 12-foot embankment, a mega highway, and 1.4 million tons of aggregate will blockade and displace the sheet flow of water across the basin and lead to further catastrophic impacts. We continue to call for an audit of this highway from conception to certification to collapse to discover the persons and entities responsible for these crimes. We've also sent letters to, since 2013, by Mary King, to the President. We also sent letters to the current Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the Minister of National Security. We also appeared before a Joint Select Committee of Parliament under Mr. Crease and presented a 25-point report to audit this. And so far, we have not had any kind of movement from the authorities on this. We think that what has happened with the flooding, what has happened with the economics of it, what has happened with the ecology of this area, what has happened with the finances of it. Remember that this project collapsed in 2015, mid-2015, constitutes a crime, and it should be investigated. So, The following are the causes and some remedies of the recent disastrous floods in the Remoute Basin and elsewhere. The Remoute flow. Now, not many people know that most of the rivers take their water from the Remoute flow, the Orinoco flow. Much of the water that comes down the Orinoco Basin and comes around the Columbus Channel and the Southwest Peninsula and the East Coast comes from the Andes. And because of recent extreme weather events and the melting of the glaciers on the lower and mid-level slopes of the Andes, you've had more water frequenting the system. So the water comes down the Andes, goes into the Orinoco Basin, comes down the Columbus Channel in a rush, and moves up the rivers. For example, it moves up the Remoute River, and there is no gate. So when this water moves up during the wet season, the rainy season, up the Remoute River, and there is high precipitation because of extreme weather events in Trinidad and Tobago, and the water from inland starts moving from Moruga, Barrackpore, Valley Line, Faizabad, Sipari, all those channels going down towards the west coast, and the water is being backed up in the sea because of this Orinoco flow up the Remoute River. It has nowhere to go. So it basically spills onto the banks. And at high tides, you have this clash of water. Now, the water doesn't stick to the 9 rivers. It travels in sheet flow because most of that river is below the sea level at high tide. So it spills over the banks and travels in sheet. So it doesn't go orderly into the rivers and the channels which were dredged by man. It flows in a sheet across the Remoute Lagoon, and that the displacement caused by embankments, highway systems, large settlements, displacement of that water which attacks people, which attacks their homes, which attacks their farms, which attacks their roadways, which creates diseases and all the consequent effects. That is a large hydrological system which affects all of Trinidad and Tobago, especially the Remoute Lagoon, the River Swamp, and the Caroni, and so on. So that's why we are saying, are you crazy? Are you a criminal to put a large highway system across this Remoute Lagoon? 5 large interchanges, 1.4 million tons of aggregate. That's a crime, and we don't want it to continue, all right? So if you understand that big picture, the last Prime Minister was talking about the big picture. That is the big picture. Unfortunately, I don't think that the government ministers and the experts are telling the people the right narrative. It is not rubbish in the river, and old fridge and old stove that is causing this. It is extreme weather events. And this is going to be aggravated in the future, next year, the following year, leading to, in the high areas, landslides and landslips, and in the low areas, a lot of water. There is a lot of water in the system, and the water has to go somewhere. In the northern parts, the energy of the water will turn into hurricanes, and down in the southern climes where we are, you'll have landslides, landslips, and you'll have lots of flooding. And we have not developed, the government has not developed the political structure, they have not developed the institutional structure, the technology, or they have not developed the medical and other shelter structures on the ground to deal with that. And that is why the people had to deal with it on their own. The government has not intervened to deal with this problem. So the purpose of this press conference is to let the people know that we as a people and as a government and everyone has to understand the importance of extreme weather impacts, and we have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse every year. All right? Remedies. 1, there is a system of floodgates along the insides, the eastern part of the mangrove system along the Mosquito Creek. That has not been attended to and kept up. That's the purpose of the drainage people and the penal DB corporations. You have about 7 floodgates at Faizabad.
7.
5 of them are not working. The floodgates are important because when the river water, when the seawater is backing up from the Orinoco flow, and the water coming on the other side, then the water has nowhere to go. Water backing up against water, it has nowhere to go. That's why you need the floodgates to prevent water at high tide from backing up inland. So they're not properly maintained. And they need not only to maintain it with manual technology, they need to create electronic technology to manage from central locations. Okay, they need to do that because it's the tide changes twice a day, and you have to move the gates twice a day, all right? And the rainfall is very haphazard, so you have to know what you're doing. They have to run it from a central computerized location. So that's very important, not only there, but in Caroni and in the river, that's where. Hydrology before hydraulics. You can't say we're going to create a hydraulic system for a highway unless you understand the hydrology. That was the point of the first hunger strike. You have to get your hydrology correct. That's what the Armstrong report was saying. You have to do a hydrological study of the Remoute Lagoon before you devise the hydraulics. And hydraulics from the San Fernando to Point Fortin Highway along the creek, they haven't figured that one out yet. That is what helped to aggravate the flooding in the woodland area. So they have to understand, we have to pay people, we have to understand the hydrology of Trinidad and Tobago. We have to have a master hydrological plan, see how the water behaves in the sea, in the air, in the biosphere, before we can start creating successful technologies and hydraulics. So we have to put hydrology before hydraulics. You can't say you're going to build drain and you don't understand the general behavior of the water. Retention ponds. In the olden days when Mrs. C was young, they used to have a lot of delkees or soties, where they used to put ponds to capture the water, and when it was dry season, they used to use this water. But they are no longer the retention ponds. So we have to deal with making retention ponds so that you capture a lot of this water which flows in sheets across the Remoute Lagoon. Hydrological studies, the development of hydrological studies programs at the local universities, water control and management mitigation will be a permanent feature of a future economy. So please, Dr. Rowley, it's not about gas only. It's not about gas. Don't wait on gas. Water situation has to be monitored and resolved. Okay? Local government reform. Dr. Rowley in Port of Spain cannot sit down and fire people based upon where he is. The people in the local constituencies have to deal with this problem, and they need to be empowered to deal with this. That's why we've been calling for local government reform, constituency government. So local chieftains, local people in the church, the police, the judiciary, local citizens, local village councils have to deal with this problem. And you have to have standard operating procedures year in and year out to deal with this. Okay, you can't say in Port of Spain and fire a man because he didn't act, because he can't do anything. You have to have systems on the ground, like Cuba has in dealing with hurricane, for example, on the ground to deal with these standard operating procedures as a matter of course. We have to do this in future. We have a lot of lowland in Trinidad and Tobago. We have 3 areas of highland and we have a lot of lowland, and we have to deal with that. We can't get beyond that. Rainwater harvesting technology, just very, very important. A lot of rainwater comes off the roof, Diego Martin, to Arriba. A lot of rainwater comes off people's roofs. It goes down into the Caroni Plains. We have to harvest that water and use it for farming, and we have to use it for domestic purposes, for industrial purposes. All right? Very important. We have to develop the technology for this. Horticulture is very important. What large forests and trees do is that they intercept the water, and they hold the water, and they store water. And that's why it is very important to plant large trees and clumps of trees and forests and to resuscitate those kinds of forests, especially in the areas which are flat land. They store large volumes of water. All right, so I don't want to go into law. I want to just say that Trinidad and Tobago ought not to listen to that narrative. It's caused by rubbish. That aggravates it. But the general hydrological conditions in this nation, in the Southern Caribbean, elsewhere, have changed. Extreme weather impacts will create lots of landslips, lots of flooding, and we have to deal with it using governance, technology, the correct institutional framework, and stop being partisan about it. All right? And that's why I want to salute Mr. Siu, because he went and he visited all governments. He visited Ms. Prasad Bisesa twice. He visited Dr. Rowley twice. He visited the president. He visited the MPs from all sides. And he told them what was the case. The hunger strike said a hydrological study of the Remoute wetland basin must be done. A social impact assessment must be done. A cost-benefit analysis of so-and-so must be done. All of that, the hunger striker was informed by Mr. Siu. And all of that came into being. The project fell apart in 2015 because we were funding it from recurrent expenditure. Look at the social impact of flooding. hydrological study. There was no hydrological study. The EMA said that. Armstrong said that the CEC for this project was flawed. So, I mean, I hope you could, Mr. Seal and his family, they're living on the site of the penal interchange. They cannot get the government to give them permission to break down that old wooden house and build a new house because they say an interchange is going there. I don't think the government is mad enough to put an interchange in penal given what has happened with this flooding. So we want to appeal to the government to give Mr. Seal and his family, who has done human service to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the last 20 years, as an advocate for good hydrological study, working in the Ministry of Works as well. Give him permission, town and country planning, to build and rebuild his house there. All right? Don't harass him like that. Because you're not going to put, as far as we're concerned, any big interchange in Penal. All right? The government knows what our optimum connectivity plan is. So I just wanted to show you a few pictures of Mr. Steve. That's why we have him there. Could you just, that's when you went to visit the Prime Minister when he was opposition leader. That's when he was coming out of the President's house. He was very ill then. He was suffering from cancer. And I have a little clip to show you, a little clip just to remind you of how he spoke and the way he spoke and what he said. That picture is for the YouTube, and Mr. Hollis, that's your video.
Oh, you sure that Hollis? So that look like nice.
All right, well, it could be yours, Mr. Tosi. All right, Mr. Tara, thank you very much for coming.
Good morning. My name is Tara Sharma. I live at Siparia in Linear Devi. I lived there for the past 40 years. And I born and grew up in San Francisco. And my grandparents, my grandfather, came from India as a little boy in 10 years. And since that, we planted the Oropuch Lagoon. My grandfather lived there more than 100. From 1887, they live in that place. And we actually grew up in the Oropuch Lagoon. That is bordered to where the Konapo Channel run in the middle of that Oropuch Lagoon, Block 5. That is bounded on the west by Akbar Trace, St. John, and by the Drudge River. And my grandfather used to always say, these water that come in the basin of the Oropuch Lagoon, in the upper part of the Oropuch Lagoon is all in Budu Trace, Mohesh Road, and the middle of the Oropuch Lagoon is in Suchit Trace, right where they have the embankment. And the lower part is in Pluck Road, San Francisco, and then it gone to the 5th block, that where my grandfather and my whole family until this day, they plant rice, but now we don't plant rice. They plant crops, short crops like bodi, watermelon, all these things. So my grandfather used to say that this water have a very long and natural course coming from Valley Line, Barakpo, from Moruga, and come all the way and settle in the Oropuch Lagoon. And it's a natural water course that it has. The old people call it the Soti. You know what is the Soti? The Soti is some, like when you build a pond or you build something, a soak away. Let me put it straight so. So when all the water draining out, it run through the Soti, and that will go and settle down in the basin in Remoute Lagoon. I lived there so long, my entire family, we never see flood. But in the 7th of August, in 2014, rain fall just for about, you could say, less than 15 minutes. And in our home where we live, had water running through, like if it's a river, 5 feet and more. And for so long we lived there, we never see flood. What caused that is the embankment where they're running from north to south. Now, when they started to put these amount of aggregate there, they blocked all the river, so the dirt wouldn't wash away. And by doing that, they caused the water to reverse back, because our water came in a wink of an eye and just flood the place. And where we live in the heart of Davie, just before the first NP gas station, they had the invert drain. Now they have drained the bill, and now still the water cannot go. If rainfall until today, from 2014 until today, if rainfall for 2 minutes, your place flooded. So much flood that it killed down everything, all big trees, plants, anything you could talk about, destroy it. And that is a place we used to plant. Now what caused that? I heard, I don't want to call name, but people so naive, they're so sick in the head, that they would say, you know, people throw a fridge, they throw all kind of thing, and they block up. I want each and every one of you to go and see in the rivers how much tons and how much mile did fridge and all sort of old thing block up the river. Nonsense. You know, the people, where we live there, we tired complain, and the Pinal Debe Regional Corporation is just in the back of our home. And that drain running in the side before the first NP gas station is full of slush. You know, until today, they never see it fit to come and clean that drain. The people don't maintain the place. They don't do their work. And apart from that, there will be no end to flooding. You know why? Because of man-made. Because of sheer greed, you know? Like they get up one morning without doing anything. Now the land, I could tell you about the land. When the place dry and rain fall, the land would have cracks. The land would absorb the water. But plenty rain now, that comes sappy. So where the water will go? It will flow all over the place. Because when the tide high, it reversing back into the new cut channel. None of the rivers cannot carry it. So what happened? Water is a thing that's come down in a rush. It needs place. That is the reason why you see so many 100 homes flooded. Why it flooded? Due to that big embankment and the blockage of the natural water course running. That caused the flood. Whether people believe it or not, it is the facts. And there would be no end until something is done. They have to find a solution, they have to do their studies, and they have to use common sense and look at the situation. The Remoute Lagoon is the basin. That is where it retains all the water. You cannot block up all the water course. You cannot put a highway. And that is the problem. And how they will undo that, well, I don't know. But that have an alternative. They have something else in their mind. Not that they want a highway. If you look at the amount of vehicle in Trinidad and Tobago, I will tell you that when we get up in the morning, from 3:30 in the morning, vehicles start on the road. And when you watch 6 o'clock, vehicle bumper to bumper, because they're going to one destination. And how much length it have in Trinidad, and the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago is not even long as one of the street in Canada. Young Street, any one of the street. And Trinidad and Tobago could fit in one of those places, one of those lake in Ontario. This is a very small place. You have to know what you're doing. You just can't study. And the problem that people have now, whether you believe it or not, you will have to come like China. You have to pack up all your vehicle home. Too much of vehicle, too much of pollution. And that causing problem. It is problem. It is natural, man-made problem. They created all this. And if you say you have betterment, there is no betterment. You see what happened only last month? The people suffering until today in Pluck Road, Woodland, Remoute. I know all those places, you know, because I walk all those places. I know the land. And I am telling you, I am not guessing, I am telling you the problem, and they have no solution for that. I think that is all I have to say for now, and thank you.
Any questions? Sarah.
Someone just said in your presentation there, I remember just recently you had a press conference on the site of some of the areas that Ms. Tara was talking about. You made mention about, you made some things to the government, say that if they don't do some cleaning up of that area that they left there, that you all will do it yourself. What is the latest with that? You didn't hear anything after that. You can tell us after the story was aired and being highlighted.
Yeah, that's a very good question, to say. Well, we went on the site and we said that we didn't want the embankment there because the embankment, since that embankment was built, I think if those of you have been following the story with Mr. Dalai and others in the Santo, you will know that there have been 3 major floodings in that area. And it is very clear that the embankment is causing a problem. The following day, the Minister of Works went out to the site, and I think you were there when he went out, and he said that the solution would be to dredge some little channels. Well, I was watching the channels, and I studied the channels very closely. That hasn't solved the problem. Because as I said, the water travels in sheets. If this is the Remoute Lagoon here, the water doesn't travel just through the cracks. It doesn't just travel through those cracks. It travels on sheets across the land. So the water wouldn't obediently go to a crack. So those are the cracks that they made in the embankment. It didn't obediently go. The water isn't like that. It takes the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is along the surface of the earth. So that hasn't solved the problem. All right? So the minister, I need to reaffirm that, thanks for reminding me, they need to remove that entire embankment and go back to a plan. That is, if you want to build a road here, build it at the level of the road, stitch it onto the existing road network, and do not put any embankment there. Put the canals alongside it, as you would have with Lagoon Road. You have canals alongside it, that leads to the Remoute River. Do that. Do not put any big embankment on the Remoute Lagoon. Do not put any mega highway there. Do not dump more aggregate in the Remoute Lagoon. You're just going to create disease and suffering about the people. But the people are very quiet. They were misled. The last government took a knife and dug out the eyes and misled them because of partisanship. And they're not saying anything, and they're taking the suffering. That's not a good approach to governance. Talk the truth and tell and explain the reasons what has caused this flooding. Right? But what we're saying is that embankment has to go, and we will not permit any further embankment, aggregate, interchange, ramp, highway on the Remoute Lagoon, because it is going to be devastating. We've already seen impacts. It is not the place to put a highway. Highway is good. To go from point A to point B is good. A super fast When you watch out the window and you see all the suffering, is that good? When you see farms destroyed, is that good? When you see communities destroyed, is that good? When you see animals stranded, is that good? When you see ducks in water catching cramp, is that good? When you see the agricultural assets of the nation going into floods, is that good? It's not good. So a highway is beautiful, but it is not the place to put it. That embankment is in the wrong place. Does that answer your question?
So yeah, Dr. Kulal Singh, you also said that if nothing has been nothing's been done, you was going to take it on your own, and we know you are capable of doing those kinds of action. What are you still thinking about doing it on your own?
Oh, I'll tell you what I'll do, Mr. Tulsi. We met with the Minister of Works about a year ago, and he gave us the assurance that if they're going to do any work on that highway from David to Montezeri, they'll first consult with us. So I will go to meet with him, and I'm going to ask them what is their intention. I'm going to meet with Esther Farmer, who is the head of MIDCO, what is the intention for that highway, and then I will inform you of what we're going to do depending on the answer.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a year already lapsed there. Yeah. But you said that you were going to take the man for your own. You have always done very drastic.
Yeah, but I'm going to say I'm not Mother Lakshmi, Mr. I'm not Mother Lakshmi. I cannot do an embankment. If we ask Mr. Warner to do it, Mr. Dukaran to do it, Mr. Carson Charles to do it, who is Kamala Prasad Bisesa to do it, it would be very difficult for them to do it. So how could Wayne Kubla Singh do all of that and they can't do it? They're the ones who put it there?
There's a lot of constructors in our area who would have been also affected by the flooding. If this fails, do you plan to go to these contractors to ask for assistance to remove them aggregate? Because we're not getting the sense from the government that they intend to do that. Is that an option?
I will have to think about what is possible. I can't really say because I don't have an idea what is possible. But I do know that that embankment has to be removed, either with the government's cooperation or with the public's cooperation. It has to be removed. All right?
Are you satisfied with the cooperation you're getting so far from the public in the public or the government?
As I said, that the public in that area, they're sworn to some kind of mystic vow to the last government. And it's very difficult to get them to move on the issue. The government has not declared its hand totally on that. We have a matter in court. Unfortunately, although we've presented scientific evidence since August 2012, the matter is still in court. A simple matter is still in court. We just submitted a final evidence, and that matter wouldn't be decided until August next year. 6 years! 6 years.
Are you disheartened by that?
I'm not disheartened, no. Okay, I think we will have a good case, and I think we'll get a good result on that. So the government is not declaring its hand, I suppose, because the matter is in court. But I hope that if they want to move on this highway and do any further work, that they will inform us. But definitely, we do not want any more highway there. Connect the roads in the lagoon, use connector roads at the level of the existing roads. Connect the roads so that people enjoy connectivity on them. If you want to put on the outskirts of the Rapush Lagoon, you build your highways. When you go into the lagoon, you put your connector roads, connecting the existing roads. That's our position, has been our position. All right? So the government hasn't declared its hand, and we haven't declared our hand either. Let them declare their hand.
Dr. Kubal Singh, yes, we know the government have put their hand. But history have shown that Dr. Kubal Singh have always been very dramatic action. Is there a consideration that you may go back down on those lands and take things in your own hands?
No, I've always worked, Mr. Tulsi, with if it's the smelters, if it's the steel mill, if it's Carisal, if it's the Remoute, that plant, Remoute, that Potahiti Industrial Estate, all of those things which the communities have won, I've always worked with the communities. So I've been at the front with the communities I've had. And so if that has to be done, I have to get the community support to do it.
Is this your toughest fight, Dr. Kubal Singh?
Sorry?
Is this your toughest fight? This issue with the highways, is this the toughest issue that
The hunger strike was very devastating for me, and I think somewhat difficult for the nation, and very, very, in particular, devastating for my family. It's extremely difficult for us. First hunger strike was basically to get the government to listen to these three hydrological study, a social impact assessment, cost-benefit analysis. And the second hunger strike reached a point where the Prime Minister then, I was told, maybe you can ask her this, had asked the President of MAT to sign a paper to condemn Dr. Kubla Singh to the madhouse. You probably ask her, she have to answer that question. Dr. Warner was saying that I was eating doubles in the car. They were putting advertisements about a lizard. The man who just resigned, what's his name? Passan Barrett. He went to the propaganda advertisers to put that, and he paid under a fake company name. So they were doing all these things, putting bubblies of the priest and Kubla Singh and so on, and beating it. And Mr. Pandey came to me in a second hunger strike very early on and saying, Kubla Singh, away, they want to kill you. So knowing all those things, the hunger strike turned into a kind of mind-blowing assault on that government to get rid of them completely, defeat them and send them into the wilderness. So it turned from science into a kind of bad mind thing, which I suppose ultimately worked.
Mr. Kubla Singh, in your presentation just now, right, you mentioned the extreme weather outside. So are you predicting next year, in the following years, that we will continue to have this kind of...
No, it's not a prediction, it's a certainty. I mean, you're going to have that kind of weather, that kind of impact from now on. Because, as I said, if you look at the Andes, what's happening, all the ice caps globally, Africa, elsewhere, but as far as we're concerned, it's the Andes, you know, along the lower, at the mid-Andes, the glaciers are melting, so you have a little more water into the system. Rushing down into the Orinoco Basin, rushing around into the Columbus Channel, rushing around, embracing Southwest Peninsula, the East Coast. You can look at the water, brown water, flooding, rushing it. So you have more water in the system, and the water has to go somewhere, so you'll have more precipitation, more tidal flows inland, and that will create more flooding, definitely, and more landslides and landslips.
So year after year, we will continue to do this?
Unless we devise structures, institutional structures and technological structures to mitigate it.
Also in this question, it says there are five, well, it's to do with five large interchanges. How many interchanges are there right now?
There is a David, but they also want to build one, they would want to build one, according to the first proposal, at Pinal, Siparia, Faizabad, Mondazir, which will be five in all.
As it is right now, they have one.
We only have the David. Yeah. And of course they have that quarter-mile stretch of highway there, and then they have the quarter-mile stretch of embankment. And that's a very, very low area in the Remoute Lagoon where they have that embankment going across.
Okay, so one last question. What they want to do by the previous, when it's like this kind of thing, that would have any impact at all?
I think that they have to look at the hydrology of that embankment that they're building across there very carefully. They have to look at it very, very carefully. And I think it's very successful to mitigate the flooding there once they look at the hydraulics carefully. They have to understand the sea and the mangrove water, they have to understand it carefully. They have to do their science and their homework. But as I said, hydraulics before hydrology. You can't do hydraulics before you do the hydrology. That is the wide understanding of the behavior of water, rainfall, tidal flow, coastal water, etc. You have to understand that system. And when you understand that system, then you do your hydraulics. You can't do hydraulics before understanding hydrology. That's why hydrology is important. Water is becoming the new subject of inquiry on the planet. You have to understand it.
Dr. Kubla Singh, are you foreseeing a difficult year for farmers next year because of the problems?
Yes, if the country doesn't take the necessary steps, we'll have more problems, yes.
Higher food prices?
I can't really estimate that, but I mean, I would assume that would be the case. Not only that, but I've visited people who have little scratches on their hands and their feet because of flood water. And all of that is unreported. A lot of that is unreported. There was a man who died in Gopi Trace, you know that, because of it. You know? So a lot of these diseases, people keep it and they don't report it. They just keep it to themselves. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks for your questions.
I didn't expect you to run a hunger strike. I thought you were born with a cutlass. That's hard.
Maybe you just say to go violent.
I know Kubla Singh, that man is doing a cutlass.